party, forgiveness. Forgiveness?
I think the king is not going to forgive Despereaux because in the earlier
he said he didn't like Despereaux.
He said he was a rodent.
Yes, earlier the king said he didn't like Despereaux and he was a rodent, but Ian thinks the king is going to forgive Despereaux. He went first to the throne room, but the king was not there. So Despereaux slipped through a hole and was making his way to the princess's room. When he came to the mouse council, 13 mice and one honored head mouse sitting on a piece of wood, debating important mouse matters. Despereaux stopped and stood very still. "Fellow honored mice," said the most honored head mouse, and he looked up and saw Despereaux. "Despereaux," he whispered. The other mice leaned forward. "Pardon?" one said. "Excuse me?" said another. "I didn't hear that right. I thought you just said Despereaux." The head mouse gathered himself. "Fellow members, a ghost! A ghost!" And he raised a shaky paw and pointed at Despereaux. The other mice turned, and there was Despereaux Tilly, covered in flour, looking at them. The red thread still around his neck, like a trail of blood. Like a trail of blood. What is that?
Simile.
A simile, comparing it. "Despereaux, son, you've come back." Despereaux looked at his father and saw an old mouse with gray fur. How could that be? Despereaux had only been gone a few days, but his father seemed to age many years in his absence. "Son, ghost of my son," trembling, "I dream about you every night. I dream about the drum that sent you to your death. I was wrong. And there's a picture. Says, "Son, you have come back." See the picture?
He's not dead.
"No," called the honored head mouse. "No." "I've destroyed it," said Lester. "I've destroyed the drum. Will you forgive me?" "No! Do not ask the ghost to forgive you, Lester. You did as you should. You did what was best for the mouse community." Lester ignored the head mouse. "Son," he said, "please." Despereaux looked at his father with gray streaked fur. His father looked so small, so sad. "Forgive me," said Lester. Forgiveness, reader, is something I think that is like hope and love. It's a powerful, wonderful thing. And a ridiculous thing. Isn't it ridiculous to think that a son could forgive his father for beating the drum that sent him to his dungeon death? Isn't it ridiculous to think the mouse could forgive someone for such perfidy? But still, Despereaux Tilling spoke. He said, "I forgive you, Pa." He said those words because he sensed it was the only way to save his own heart from breaking in two. Despereaux, reader, spoke those words to save himself. And then he turned from his father and said, "You were wrong," he said, "all of you. You asked me to renounce my sins. I ask you to renounce yours. You wronged me. Repent." "Never," said the head mouse. Despereaux stood before the mouse council and realized he was a different mouse than the last time he faced it. He'd been to the dungeon and back up out of it. He knew things he would never know, and he realized no matter, not at all. And so without saying another word, Despereaux turned and left the room, and he was gone. The head mouse slapped his tail. "Mice of the council, we have been paid a visit by a ghost who told us to repent. We will now take a vote. All in favor of saying this visit did not occur, say aye." And from the members of the mouse council, there came a tiny chorus of aye. Only one mouse said nothing. That mouse was Despereaux's father, Lester Tilling. He turned his head away from the other members of the mouse council. He was trying to hide his tears. He was crying, reader, because he had been forgiven. So it wasn't the king who was forgiving. Who forgave? Despereaux forgave his.
Father.
But the rest of the Mouse Council decided to vote that this never even happened.
They
They're
still
going to
think he's a
pretend
ghost.
he was a ghost.
Well, they think he's a ghost.